I never thought a Thursday night could change everything. I'd come home from work around 7 p.m. expecting the usual routine dinner, a few laughs, maybe some background music while we unwound, but the house felt different before I even opened the door. The faint smell of perfume in the hallway was too sharp. The living room lights were off, the TV silent. Something was off. I knew it instinctively. I found Sarah in the bedroom, scrolling through her phone with a look I hadn't seen before. Sharp, distracted, detached. When she noticed me, she didn't smile or greet me. Instead, she lifted her chin and said, almost casually, "I'm going out tonight." I froze. Out? Where? I asked, already suspecting the answer. To the club. Just some fun with friends, she replied. Her voice carried a tone of irritation I couldn't ignore. I remember standing there trying to process the words. The club on a Thursday night. I'd been working 12-hour shifts all week, piling up overtime so we could finally take that trip to Florida in the spring. Yet here she was, treating our home in Portland like it wasn't even worth noticing. I didn't say anything at first. I just let her words hang in the air. She didn't wait for a response. She grabbed her purse, threw on a leather jacket, and walked past me with a kind of smug defiance that made my chest tighten. I followed her with my eyes, not out of obsession, but because I wanted to memorize the way she moved, the way she looked when she didn't care. Before she reached the door, she turned back with a smirk. "If you're so worried, then divorce me," she said, almost laughing. Her words hit me like a blow I hadn't seen coming. But instead of anger, instead of yelling, I felt a clarity wash over me. A strange, calm realization that I didn't have to chase love that had already slipped away. I looked at her and said quietly, deliberately, "If that's what you want, I'll make sure you don't have to wait long." She blinked, confusion flashing across her face. For a moment the smirk faltered. "I'll be leaving in 30 minutes, I continued, still calm. "Get your things ready." Her eyes widened. "What? What are you talking about?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't pace the room or slam a door. I just kept my eyes on her, letting the words sink in. "You said you want a divorce. Fine. I'm giving you the space you asked for, but not the chaos. Pack what you need and go. I'll handle the rest." She stared at me, frozen, like she hadn't expected me to act so deliberately. She'd expected protests, arguments, pleading, emotional chaos, but I offered none of it. My voice remained steady, calm, almost too calm, and I could see the panic flicker in her expression for the first time in months. "Are you serious?" she finally asked, her confident tone slipping into uncertainty. "Completely serious," I said. "I'll be gone in 30 minutes. You have until then to get your things ready." She stumbled backward toward the closet, fumbling for her heels, her purse, anything she could grab quickly. I could feel the tension in the room, thick and electric. But it wasn't mine. I had nothing left to prove, nothing to chase, nothing to beg for. The 30 minutes passed slowly but purposefully. I used the time to gather my essentials, my laptop, a few personal items, my gym bag, simple things, nothing dramatic, nothing for show. Just my life in order, ready to leave behind the chaos she had created. By the time she realized I wasn't bluffing, she was halfway panicked. "Wait, what do you mean you're leaving? I didn't think you'd actually." I cut her off with a calm, final tone. "I'm leaving because you asked for it. I'm not angry. I'm not hurt in the way you think. I'm just done wasting energy on someone who doesn't care anymore. You said it. You meant it. Now act accordingly." Her hands trembled slightly as she stuffed a few things into her bag, the mask of confidence finally cracking. I watched her, feeling a mixture of relief and empowerment, knowing I had taken back control of a situation that had slowly been spiraling out of my hands for months. By the time I was ready to step out the door, I could hear the distant roar of traffic from I-5, the faint thump of bass from somewhere downtown. I paused at the threshold, looking back at her for the first time since the confrontation began. Her eyes were wide, uncertain, and there was something new there. Fear, maybe, or realization. She opened her mouth, likely to argue, but no words came out. Instead, she just watched me, frozen, as if she had no script for how to respond. I didn't give her one. I just walked out. The cool evening air hit me as I stepped onto the porch, crisp and calming. I felt the weight that had been pressing on my chest for months lift slightly. It wasn't childish relief. It was sharp, clean clarity. This was not revenge. This was boundary. This was life taken back. As I started the car, my phone buzzed. A message from her, "Wait, come back." I didn't mean it. I didn't reply. I didn't accelerate either. I just sat there, letting the message sink in. I could feel my pulse steadying, my mind quieting. Her panic was evident even in text. She had assumed I would beg, that I would react emotionally. But she had underestimated how tired I had grown of the waiting, the silence, the cold dismissals. 5 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. Another text. "I'm coming home. Don't leave." I started the engine. The streetlights reflected off the windshield, casting brief shadows across the dashboard. I felt a strange calm as I drove, measured, deliberate, in control. I didn't speed. I didn't rant. I simply waited. She opened the door before I could knock. Her jacket was slightly wrinkled, her hair out of place, and there was still a faint trace of that same perfume lingering, the scent that had hit me when I walked in hours earlier. She stepped aside without a word, and I could see the panic behind her attempt at a confident exterior. "Why? Why are you here?" she asked, voice trembling, trying to regain authority. I kept my tone calm, almost clinical. "Because you realized you didn't want to follow through unless you saw how serious I was. You pushed me to the edge. You wanted a divorce on your terms. I showed you I would act on your words." Her eyes widened. She hadn't expected that, not this level of calm, not this kind of certainty. The power dynamic had shifted, and she knew it. I just, she stammered, flustered. "I didn't think you'd actually." I interrupted her softly. "I don't argue with people who refuse to value me. You said, 'Divorce me.' You meant it." I responded appropriately. "Now we decide what comes next, without fear, without games." She looked down at the floor, ashamed and cornered. And for the first time, she wasn't the one in control. I could see the wheels turning in her mind, calculating how to salvage what she could, how to reclaim some sense of authority. But it was too late. The calmness in my demeanor had done what shouting, pleading, or tears never could. It shifted the power, and she realized she couldn't bluff me anymore. Minutes passed in silence. Then she spoke, voice barely above a whisper. I guess I overreacted. I didn't expect." I held up a hand. "Stop. Don't explain. Don't justify. Just acknowledge your choice. That's enough." She nodded, swallowing hard, her face pale. She had intended to push me into chaos, to provoke me into begging or screaming. But instead she was met with clarity, calmness, and authority. And in that, she saw the truth she had ignored for too long. I was done chasing a love that wasn't reciprocal. The evening stretched on quietly. There was no yelling, no tears, no dramatic collapse, just her realization and my steadiness. Eventually, she sat down, silent, as if the fight had been removed entirely from the room. And for the first time in months, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. Not relief, not triumph, just quiet, sharp clarity. I hadn't needed to argue or raise my voice to prove myself. I had merely responded to her words with honesty and consistency. That was enough. That night, Sarah didn't leave again. She stayed home, not because I forced her, but because she finally understood the consequence of underestimating me, of pushing me past my limit. And in that silence, in that quiet, we both understood something fundamental. Respect isn't demanded. It's recognized. And when it isn't, calm action often speaks louder than any argument ever could. I settled onto the couch, the weight of months lifting with each breath. She sat across from me, tense but reflective. No apologies were made, no dramatic statements, just a shift in understanding. And for the first time in a long time, I knew that control, dignity, and self-respect weren't things you begged for. They were things you took, quietly, deliberately, without chaos. That night changed everything. Not because of fireworks or screaming matches, but because clarity, calmness, and unwavering self-respect revealed a truth neither of us could ignore. The power of quiet action, I realized, was far stronger than words, louder than rage, and infinitely more lasting.